everybody, this is Alejandra Campos from Campos Law Firm. Today we have a very important guest, and he's the new lawyer that works now for Campos Law. So welcome. Can you state your name for the public, please?
My name is Katlyn Johnson.
Thank you so much, Katlyn. So today we wanted to talk about your experience. I understand that you have a lot of experience in criminal law. So can you tell us how did you start and what is your passion in law?
So I became a criminal defense lawyer back in 2022. I started as a public defender, so just doing criminal defense for the state. After that, I moved to a private law firm where I continued doing criminal defense. I spent the last year of my practice doing juvenile defense, so defending kids in court. And then I'm back to doing criminal defense for Campos. So I've mostly done criminal defense.
That's so nice. So what can you tell us about one case for those juvenile cases that still keep in mind because it was so hard? Can you tell us one of these stories so that people know?
I had a kid that was charged in El Paso County, so Colorado Springs, Colorado. He was a minority, so he was a kid of color, and he was charged with some pretty high felonies. It wasn't him that did it. He was falsely accused, and he was facing a lot of prison time, a lot of time in kid prison. And, we had to have some hard conversations about, what he wanted to do. And ultimately, we ended up going to what's called a preliminary hearing. The court has to determine whether there's probable cause. And ultimately, we won at preliminary hearing. So the case didn't end up moving forward, but he spent a lot of time and money and energy, being charged for something he didn't do. So it was still very emotional. I know he was grateful it was done, but it did change his life, and he lost a lot because of it. So.
And how old was he at that time?
He was 15 at the time.
And can you tell us what kind of charges they were giving to him?
They charged him with aggravated robbery, burglary, felony theft related to a mall, and they charged him with some assault charges.
Wow, and he was not even a person that, why, how come
they charged him?
How did he got so involved on this?
So the officer said that he had recognized my client from another incident unrelated to what he charged him with, and said that they couldn't identify who it was. They didn't have proof. And so they looked at the surveillance photos, and the officer claimed it was my client, and it wasn't my client. And the tattoos were different, and there was different piercings, and we were able to bring that up. But everyone that looked at the case thought it was him because, he
was a minority, same color like the minorities.
Yep. And cops don't seem to care when you're a person of color. So we ended up bringing that to the court, but he was facing a lot of time, and the prosecutors wanted to send him to prison for 2 years. So
2 years when he was only 15.
Yeah.
And how did he came up to get your services?
He was looking for an attorney. He ultimately at the time was kind of looking for an attorney that specialized in juvenile defense. And so I worked at a firm, and they did mostly juvenile defense, but we ended up getting appointed on his case, so put on his case. And then, we worked together, and his mom ended up telling me that she was glad that I was, that I defended her son and that no one else was willing to. So
of course. I cannot even imagine the pain for a parent knowing that, your kid at 15 is only a little kid, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I have a daughter that is 20 and I still think that she's a child.
Yeah.
So I cannot even imagine what the pain of the parents knowing that they could do nothing except, the only thing that the parents could do at this time was trying to help to get a good lawyer for them, right?
Right. I mean, it's hard because you don't know who to trust, and it's the end of, as a mother, it's the end of the world for you, but for your kid, it's the end of the world for them because it affects their record and their jobs. And at the time, you had just had a baby, so she was very worried. So it was hard because it was not just about my client trusting me, but his family trusting me too.
Exactly. Can you tell me if he would have been convicted, what kind of repercussions for his record would he have for the rest of his life?
So if he was a kid at the time, kids get certain protections. So he would have been looking at having a felony on his record that exposes you to certain mandatory sentencing if you pick up another case in the future. So for kids, if they get a certain number of felonies, they can start being charged as habitual offenders. And so it would have affected his ability to get jobs because while he's underage, he has to disclose whether he's had contact with law enforcement. he would have not been able to get certain benefits because he would have had to disclose that he was convicted of a felony. So there was definitely a lot riding on the line. It could have affected his parental rights if he was convicted. So there was a lot of, especially if he went to, went to jail or prison for any amount of time. I mean, that would have affected his ability to provide for his child. So, and a lot of the times, especially with kids, they get kicked out of school. And so they can't go to school. So they can't finish high school or they can't get a GED. And so there was a lot that would have affected his future long term that was more than just the charge. And so it's the same thing with adults, right? Having a felony conviction can affect your job, sometimes your parental rights, whether you're eligible for benefits, whether you can own guns in the future. So there was a lot of potential consequences.
I imagine. And how long it took you? How long did you were representing this client?
I was on his case for about 4 months. So I got the case. We had thousands of pages of evidence. So we had police reports, photos, body-worn camera footage, and so there was over 100 hours of body-worn camera footage. So it took a while to review the evidence, and then we tried to talk to the prosecutor for a while about dismissing the case, and they said no, and they were firm about it. So then finally we set for that preliminary hearing, and so that was it. That was considered a short timeline. That was quick. Most cases, if I had seen it through, would have been over a year long.
Yes, I imagine, right? And fortunately, in the preliminary hearing, the judge decided in your favor, right? And understood that there were not really proof,
right?
And that this was not the person that had committed this crime.
Yeah, there's a lot of hearings. The preliminary hearings, the initial hearing. So that was where the judge determined, was there enough evidence to believe that maybe my client did it? And because we were able to prove that it wasn't him based on the tattoos and the piercings, we were able to bring that to light, and the court said, I'm not going to let these charges move forward. So eventually we got the DA to dismiss the rest of the charges, and the client ended up keeping his record clean on that one.
Excellent. So, this is a perfect case that shows how by protecting the client, by believing in the client, we can make a difference. And just by what you have here, this lawyer, Katlyn, she specializes in juvenile defense. And we recently represent another client also that was in the school. I think the attorney Janice did that job. And the parents are really grateful because parents at that moment, they don't know what to do. They sometimes don't even understand the repercussions of what happened after your child is charged. Can you imagine after your child is being convicted, if they cannot finish high school, if that's going to be in the record, what's going to happen in the future if they ever commit another crime? And their whole future can be destroyed because it's going to show in the records forever, unfortunately, right?
Yeah, juvenile court's very complicated. It's different than adult court, and sometimes it's scarier. So it is very important to have someone that knows the systems and knows how it works, and kids have certain rights that adults don't have, and adults have certain rights that kids don't have. A big example of that is kids aren't always entitled to a jury trial. So sometimes your decision is left up, instead of picking a jury, it's left up to the judge or the prosecutor. So it's a different world.
And how did you end up in this specific area of law?
So my last firm, when I took a job there, that was their specialty, was doing juvenile defense. I've always liked working with kids. That was always something I really enjoyed. When I was a public defender, I enjoyed my younger clients. I felt like, because I'm a younger attorney, I could relate to them better. And so, I haven't been out of high school that long. So it's a lot easier to talk to a kid in high school when you're younger.
Exactly.
And so I was really grateful to work with kids, and I really do enjoy working with kids. I think, there's a lot going on in their life, and there's a lot of things going on that courts don't realize. So I started doing that, and I've also done some work in truancy, so working with kids that are being expelled from school, from missing school and stuff like that. So I got lucky that I found a job that worked with kids, but that was always kind of what I wanted to do.
That's so nice. So can you tell me which one has been the youngest kid that you have represented?
The youngest kid that I had come through was 11 years old.
11?
Yeah.
And what kind of charges they were giving that poor child?
There's a lot of young kids. I would say probably around 11 or 12, they're charging you with either cases involving allegations of sexual misconduct. So saying that there was some unlawful sexual contact you're having, because you're a kid, you're learning, right? You're learning about body systems. School fights is a big one we see kids charged with, is, getting in fights at school. And those are probably the two common ones. Some theft, stealing, because you're young, and young kids do stuff. But the kid I had that was that young was charged with a felony assault after getting in a fight with a neighbor, and then they were charged with allegations of sexual misconduct, because you're a kid. You don't always recognize that the same way an adult does.
Oh, wow. Amazing, right? Well, thank you so much, Katlyn, for first of all, it's a privilege that you have decided to come and join our law firm. I know definitely, especially for the type of clientele that come to Campos Law, they are underserved clients. They are clients that they had knocked the doors in another law firms, and sometimes they have not been heard, and that's why we are here. We are here to try to give them a second chance, an opportunity. We want to listen to them, we care about them, and we believe in them, and that's why we are here. And I think all the lawyers that form the group of Campos Law Firm, they have the same mentality, right? We are here to serve. We are here because we have passion. We are here to try to protect the clients. And again, thank you so much, Katlyn. It's a pleasure and a privilege to have you in our law firm. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.